Welcome, everybody, to the Waiver Watch Draft for Week 9. This is Jay Mill from CFF Lists. I've got my partner, Willie B, as usual. How you doing, Willie?
Doing great. Good morning.
And this is Week 2 of what we consider the semifinal rounds. We've got Jared Palmgren and Nino Brown joining us. This happens to be the number 1 and number 3 seeds coming into this second round of competition. Nino, just 2 short weeks ago, knocked Chris Moxley off of that number 1 pedestal with the best guest pick of the season with 133 points, which happens to also be the third best ever in the 2 years that we've been doing this. Jared, very respectable third place with 108.6 points in week 1, which is probably one of the tougher weeks to find your guys. So props to Jared on kind of a tough 100-plus game in week 1. And we're going to get a little more into what they're up to. I think a lot of you guys know what they are up to, but we'll kind of circle back around to that as we quickly jump into the recap of last week before getting into the Week 9 draft. Willie, this was last week. I embarrassed us and had the record low 34 points, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe I got the 36. All I know is it was a record low. I have gone into full redemption mode with my 4th week over 100. So this is now 4 out of 8 where I've produced over 100. You know, this, I'm going to give you a little bit of props. This is your season low, but you still managed 62, which isn't, we've had a few guys a couple in the 30s, including myself. We've had a couple guys in the 50s. So to be your season low in 8 weeks, I still say that's not horrible that you managed 62 and you had a heck of a find with Nick Anderson, if we're going to jump into some of this right away. But what do you think about your team this week? Kind of run through it real quick for us.
Yeah, Utah State, coaches. I'm not sure what you guys are doing. You had Legas, back-to-back 300-yard games. I think he had 10 touchdowns in the last 3 games, and then you tried out the starter who didn't look like he was fully recovered from his concussion because he was horrible. Um, he, I don't think he did too much better than the 0 that I got from Legas. So,
Right.
um,
Well, if you use my math,
I will.
remember last week I said when you get a DNP from a quarterback, you can make yourself feel better by just adding 20 to your score and saying you would have had 82. So that's the way I made
Mhm.
myself feel better about it. So, it was a DNP.
Well,
It wasn't a bad pick in the sense that, you
y-
picked a guy who performed poorly. You just picked a guy that got the raw end of the deal from the coaches.
well, but the thing is, I can understand if the starter comes back and he's playing well, but when he's looking the way he looked, why not put the guy in who was actually helping the team? But
Right.
anyway,
Yeah.
no, the other guys, I mean, Kalen Black, I won't go against the family. We won't be picking guys against Marshall again, so that's
Okay.
my own fault.
Right.
Um, I still like the play that I did with Holden Willis because I figured this was going to be his last week, that he'd be under. So I liked playing him at the wide receiver spot because I still got a decent 8.2 out of Knox.
Right.
So
Yeah. I was
I
going to
did
say,
like
though,
that.
the
So.
interesting thing there is it's sort of worked. He got a good tight end number. We always shoot for 10 points from the tight ends, 15 points from the other position players, and then quarterbacks 20 is what we're looking for. But had Willis been at tight end, he would have been in green instead of red this week. But I like that you took a chance there and tried to throw us all off of our game by playing him at receiver since he has the dual eligibility. And this is his 4th week in a row with 5th week in a row with double digits as a
Yeah,
tight end.
but then I mean he still outscored all the other tight ends.
Yeah. Yeah, he was.
And then my wide receiver twos weren't all that great over the last few weeks, and then he still kind of outperformed them. So I still like the play.
Yeah, I'll give you
And then
your biggest prop for Nick Anderson with the 27.5 because you identified the fact that Oklahoma had some other injuries at wide receiver, which even though Nick Anderson was getting touchdowns already, you anticipated a big increase in his targets, which absolutely happened. He went up to 10 targets this week, so that was a good call there. Why don't you run us through pick Chris or Kyle's real quick and jump through that, and then I'll do the other half.
all right. So Terrion Stewart, we've been talking about him for at least a month. I mean, the kid has just been balling out. So that 31.1 that he had was tremendous for him. Especially, he's going into his bye. Still only 18% rostered.
Right.
That's insane to me. But he had his best week, 19 carries, 131 yards, and the three scores.
Right.
Um, Zion Chris, a little low game for him, but like you said, that 20-point barrier is what you're looking for.
Right.
Um, Mazzotti at tight end didn't get anything. I've been kind of expecting that. He hasn't really been on my radar as
Hmm.
much lately. Just he's just not getting enough receptions for me.
Right.
And like we say, if you don't get that touchdown and then you're still in single digits, I'm still going to try to steer away, even if it is a tight end.
Right. Right.
Lewis Bond, decent, and the one that I really was surprised at, I thought Sean Atkins would have a little bit more than his 14 points that he had.
Yeah, he's been good in some weeks. He's proven to be a tad bit inconsistent. I think had one big, really big game, but otherwise he's kind of been, we thought he might keep improving on those kind of games in the high teens, but this he seems to be settling in kind of as like maybe an 18, 17, 18 point guys. But I mean, if you're in a pinch,
Well,
he's still worth plugging a hole. So Kyle ended up with 83.8. We shoot for 90. That was close. It was a good effort. Kyle's proven to be consistent, around that number. I think he had 89 or 90, in the first round. So this is definitely respectable. Moxley, he's running through his team. He was hitting on a lot of cylinders here. Technically, Mateer should be in green because 10 is the tight end number, but that's fine. He has like four out of the six that kind of hit their marks. Starting with JT Daniels at quarterback against just a atrocious Tulsa defense. If you've got anybody playing against Tulsa, it looks like you need to get them in. Quentin Cooley, who I don't want to give away all my cards here, but he's available, I believe, still this morning. So we'll see how quickly he goes in this draft. I have no doubt
I
somebody's
think we
going to take
just
him.
there we go.
And then, Callaway, like a couple of these guys are still available, so we might be able to talk about them a little bit more. But he was on point with the running backs. He really was only let down by his receivers, and he produced 95 with the lack of getting in the game for Eric Singleton in that Georgia Tech BC shootout. Just props to Chris. He had over 100 week, in his first round. He got close to it and probably should have hit it this week. So I think it's going to be a number that might get him into this final round. We'll see. We'll see how our guys do today.
Yeah, because that's the thing, gentlemen. It's that you're not necessarily playing each other. You're playing that lowest number.
Right now, you're
So
playing against Kyle to see if you could beat that 83.8. That's a good point. Yeah, 'cause we'd like to have the
right.
top two back for one final week in week 10 or week 11. My team, I'm proud of myself on that Garrett Green pick. I talked about the fact that the games he had actually played the full game, he was averaging 28 something. He ended up with 29 against a pretty bad Oklahoma State pass D. Mekhi Hughes. Again, another guy that's shocking that might still be available this week. My Navy guy let me down. I probably could have really thought deeper about him playing against Air Force, but there's still hope for Teza in the future. But Noah Smith, that was the bullseye for me. This guy played in a midweek game. I don't know if everybody here got to see him, but this is the go-to guy for Sam Houston, and they're targeting him like all game long. And the announcers couldn't say more good things about him too. So we wondered who the Sam Houston fantasy guy was going to be, and there's no doubt it's Noah Smith, number 6. Getting his 6, getting into the end zone. And I'll reserve my comments on Cole Taylor. He's not dead in the water, I don't think. He still had some targets this week. He just didn't convert them into catches. So we'll see if maybe I give him a redo here in week 9. But with that, let's introduce our guests. We'll start with Jared joining us from the acclaimed Chasing the Natty podcast, does work with Campus to Canton. The most consistent podcaster out there in the CFF world, giving you programming through the entire off season. How's the season going for you, Jared? How's it been overall?
Well, thank you. First of all, I want to thank you guys for letting me back on here. And I guess I performed well enough week one, like you said, given all the unknowns that we had week one,
Right.
to somehow make it through the entire season to be, is it top four or top six here
Top.
at the end of
This was
with
the
the
top
playoffs?
the top six out of the 14 that did it.
Okay, gotcha. So
Yeah.
somehow managed to keep one of my top three spots there. So that was definitely nice to see. In terms of how things are doing in my fantasy leagues, I'm doing pretty all right for the
Mm-hmm.
most part. There's been a couple of leagues where I'm scoring high, but it's just unfortunate in terms of who I play each week. It just happens to be every one of my opponent's best weeks
Right.
in
Right.
those weeks. Like I'm still hitting over 200. That's kind of the goal I have for most of my fantasy teams.
Right.
If I can come out of a week with 200 plus points, I'm feeling pretty good.
Right.
It's just they happen to hit like 240, 250,
Right.
and that's the only week they'll ever do that.
That really is the worst.
So
Yeah, that's the worst feeling, isn't it? When you get you have, like, I had that happen yesterday, and we got my butt kicked by somebody. I had 200 and he had 260 or something like that. So it's the worst.
Exactly. It's just there's nothing at that point you can only look at your team and like, yeah, you can look at some of your sit starts and be like, okay, maybe I could have done better on this, but at the same time, if you literally played your best game and the guy just across from you just
Right.
happened to outscore you, there's nothing you can do about that. There's no process that stops somebody else from starting a certain player.
Right. Right.
So
Well, no, that's
it
where,
is what it is. Otherwise, I'm doing great. Go ahead.
no, that's where you just hope that, like, the playoffs incorporate, at least one spot for the highest scoring team, and you got a shot at that. I know in the Kings Classic, I was looking at that this morning. Your record isn't reflective at all of how your team is, but you do have a shot. You're only 10 points out from what I saw of kind of still stealing that number 3 seed just based on, your high, your point total. So you're not out at all in Kings Classic, even at 3-5, I think.
Yeah, no, I'm 3-5 in that league, and I think I'm number 3 in the total
Right,
points scored
right.
on the season. I have to check with John on if it's like the top scorer amongst the remaining 9 teams outside of the top 3 who made the playoff, or if it's just only the top scorer. And if I don't have that top score on the entire year, then I don't make it in regardless. I need to check with him on that.
What it sounds like
But
to
again,
me.
otherwise, again,
Oh, I'm going to clarify. I think I got an understanding of it. It looks like he's taken the top 2 based on record, and then it's the highest score of the remaining 10 for the number 3 spot, and then the number
gotcha.
4 spot is the best remaining record after that. Which, yes.
Okay.
So the number 2 seed is kind of where you don't want to be. I've been telling Willie, because you've got to technically then go up against a team that scored a lot of points in that number 3 spot, which could be you this year. We'll see what happens.
I think that actually played out last year in the KC league. Anyway, again, otherwise, league's been great. I'm excited to keep it going here. I got this. We got a fun group of players to talk about here today.
Good.
I'm excited.
Yeah, Nino, how's everything on your end? I mean, we just talked to you 2 weeks ago. We got the full pre-broadcast update. Willie B did a lot of the research on your namesake. Who was it, Willie? And just give us an abbreviated version. Willie dug deep to get the background on the boxer that Nino's named after that we learned about 2 weeks ago.
Well, I didn't dig too deep, but Giovanni Benvenuti is what I came up with. Nino may have the better pronunciation of it, but he was an Olympic gold medalist in 1960. He's 85 years young, so he's still
Still
around.
alive. Nice.
He was 120-0 as an amateur, 82-7-1 as a professional with 35 knockouts. So.
Yeah. So, Nino, with all of that, do you feel like you had a lot to live up to in your dad's eyes growing up?
Yeah, big shoes to fill, you know?
Yeah, that leads you to be the guy that you are, right? The champion that you are in life.
I always grab the motto of go big and go home after that. So
right,
now
we see why.
Big, so.
Yeah, you have to. Right. Yeah. So
live up to the standard. So
yeah. So in the last 2 weeks, how have you fared? You've been in? Are you in more NFL leagues or more college leagues, or is it split pretty evenly?
I'm probably more NFL dynasty leagues. I'm in a few, college leagues, but best ball mostly. I'm kind of in the middle.
Right. We know you're doing work over
at friendly to me.
Right. You're over at the CFB Nation, if I'm not mistaken, and doing the regular podcast there. I think you're doing your own individual podcast. Let everybody know where to find that.
Yeah, over at FFB Nation. That's the Fantasy Football Nation. We do just breaking down IDP leagues, and we're doing individual guys to check out for in long-term dynasty, and then obviously CFB Nation is all things college.
Okay, and then we have to get at least 30 seconds on how you feel about kind of stealing the number 1 spot from Chris Moxley 2 weeks ago. Then be honest, do you think you just got lucky, or was it all research and skill?
Listen, for me, I think in this stuff, it's always luck. You can do all the research you want. You can do all the research you want. It doesn't always pay out.
Right.
I had a couple guys that I looked at that I wanted. They performed bigger than I expected.
Right.
And then I got lucky on a couple.
Okay, look,
it was a combination.
That's good. Good to see the honesty, and you're not just giving yourself all the credit. We all know you got to get a little bit lucky along the way, and
that's it.
It's great when you see all of your top performers in the starting lineup and not on the bench, which is the
correct.
So,
for sure.
All right. Well, we have
especially in college.
Oh
Yes.
yeah, and especially in the leagues now where they're not utilizing the auto sub for the injuries.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Right.
So with that, we have plugged everybody's name into the random.org site that I love to use. Jared came up number 1. We will go in snake draft order here. So Nino, don't fear. You're going 4th, but you'll get 4th and 5th overall, and we'll work our way back.
That's where I was before.
Yeah, exactly. The lucky number 4 spot, the 4 spot on the table. But with that, Jared, I'm kind of anxious to see how you feel this week. I know back in week 1, we all thought there were a ton of quarterbacks. That's kind of been the theme through most of these drafts. Is there seem to be quarterbacks aplenty. So, is there one you think you need to take here, or will you go another position? Let's see what you got, Jared.
Oh no, I'm repeating the same strategy I used in week 1, where I'm sitting here. Or was it? Yeah. Anyway, I have 4 quarterbacks here. I'm happy with any of the 4 that I can get, and so I'm probably going to take that. Probably not my last pick, because tight end is an absolute wasteland, and so that'll probably be my last pick. But second to last pick is definitely going to be quarterback. I came into this today convinced, especially in PPR, that I was going to go with a certain player.
Mm-hmm.
But literally leading up to this show, I changed my mind, because there is a dude that has just been phenomenal the last 4 weeks. His volume is increasing for the most part on a given basis every single week here. 100 plus rushing yards in all 4 of his last games. He's just been an absolute monster. Got to go Quentin Cooley here with my first pick here. He's got an awesome matchup against Western Kentucky, who's 127th versus the run in the entire nation.
Wow.
So you're talking about bottom 5 rushing defense right there. It is a match made in heaven that I'm getting a dude that is this on fire going up against a great matchup here. I can't ignore it.
Right.
I simply cannot ignore it.
Okay. No, that's one that I teased in the opening when we were going through last week's results, and I had a feeling, he was going to be either. If you didn't take him, I was going to take him. I'll tell you that. So yeah, there you go, Quentin Cooley, and it's amazing. He's at 21. Last night he was at 21%. Willie, did you get a check on that?
He's at 22% as of this morning.
That's we've used the word sinful for a few guys over the last couple of weeks. That's pretty sinful right there. That Quentin Cooley, when people are hungry for running backs that can produce consistently, is still not. At least last week he should have gotten over 30, but hey, that's to your benefit. Whoever you are watching, go grab him and grab him quick. The matchup is there. And with that, I'm definitely not going quarterback either. It's another week where I like all 4 of the guys, or 5, 4, any of the guys on my notes here. So I think I'm going to go with another repeat customer who I hyped up in the recap, which is Noah Smith. From Sam Houston at wide receiver. I hadn't seen him actually, in a full game, so it was really fun it's always fun to put some action and visualization to the names and numbers that we see so much of. Was able to focus in and see he really has all the makings of a true playmaker. Another receiver that is actually getting, end arounds, and they're trying to get the ball in his hands as much as possible. He's had 27 points per game in the last 4. After only averaging 5 points per game in the first 3. That tells you how his season's turned around. I don't know what was happening in the first 3 games, but they realized we're shifting this offense in his favor. So, again, went from 5 points per game in the first 3 to 27 in the last 4. So do not pay any attention to that 18 points a game that he's averaging on the season. He's getting 14 targets a game. he is the offense for Sam Houston. It doesn't matter if they win the game or not. This is fantasy football. You just want points from your individual. So go grab Noah Smith.
Well, they switched quarterbacks. That's what's helped them a ton. Is that they have a quarterback who's actually willing to push it down the field for Noah Smith, and like you said, they're manufacturing touches for him now. It's been phenomenal.
Yeah.
And again, Jeremy, that was the person I was convinced I was coming in here to take at 101 because I do think there is a teardrop between him and any other wide receiver this week.
Yep.
The only thing that kind of put me off a little bit is that they are going up against UTEP. And while UTEP is not like a phenomenal defense or anything like that, they are 28th versus the pass. So when teams do go up against them, they are not being able to put up as much passing numbers. So I think there's going to be a slight drop for Noah Smith this week compared to the previous weeks.
Certain guys, it doesn't matter if they're going to try to force the ball to him, especially in your PPR.
No, for sure. That's why I was still considering it.
Yeah. So what we've determined here is like regardless of the order, these two would have been off the board. Even if Jared and I had flip-flopped order here, we would have taken these first two behind one another. So Willie, that makes it a little tougher for you and Nino, but I'm sure you got somebody for us here that can help everybody.
I'm going to go with a guy that Jared was actually touting, and this is way back in week 1.
Okay.
When Jared had this guy, wide receiver Javon Baker from UCF. They play West Virginia this week. He is 18% owned. He is also averaging 15 points a game. Had 30 against Oklahoma, but West Virginia's pass defense isn't all that great either. I like some things that UCF is doing, so we'll take that opportunity to grab Javon Baker.
Yeah, the one thing interesting about him, it seems like he started off hot and cooled down a little bit, and Hudson kind of took over in some of those games in the middle. But it seems like that might have had a little bit to do with the quarterback change. Maybe, it's just a better connection between Baker and Plumlee. So now that Plumlee's back, it seems like Baker's back as the number one target, where it looked like I think Hudson had kind of stolen some targets when they had the backup quarterback in there. That's all right, Nino. So you got back-to-back here. Let's see who you got left here for some nice first-round decision making.
Well, I'm in the same boat as you gentlemen. There's like 3 or 4 QBs that I really like, so I'm not gonna take that because I'm gonna ride out like you are.
Right.
Now I'm nervous whether I'm just being a homer here or if the facts in front of me are working out, because it seems to me as though BC has turned the table. They turned the corner. They're becoming somewhat of a running wagon as a team with Castellanos at the helm. Pat Gallo hasn't been anything special this year. He's hurt again. He didn't play this past week. Kyle Robichaux's got a nice, juicy matchup against UConn, who's 99th overall defensively. And before the injury, Robichaux had stacked some pretty good fantasy games, 18.9, 17 points, right? Then against Army, in when he got hurt in the downpour, he only had 1. Last week, when Castellanos was still going buck wild, Robichaux had 36.9 fantasy points, 165 yards, 2 touchdowns. I'm gonna go with Robichaux here as my RB1.
Yeah, I like it.
I was hoping that he would slip towards the end. I should have known you would have gone homer here.
Yeah,
that's a great pick.
We forgot to factor in our regional picks. But I don't think you're being a homer there at all. Like it sounds like Jared had him on his list. I've had him on my list. I've got him in a couple of leagues. I was kind of keeping luckily I didn't cut him in an important league, last week. I figured I'd give him another week to see what happened. And he's had 19 carries in 3 out of the 5 games he's played in.
Exactly. He's the physical guy.
He's playing UConn. So
yeah, I didn't want to go that route because Lob is a good friend of mine. Didn't want to throw any jabs at him.
Right. So
I'll take it. Finally, we're starting to look decent again. It's been a little bit.
Well, we on our best and worst segment. We kind of had to stop and laugh because we were talking about we're like, wow, this Georgia Tech Boston College game is an exciting game, and they're like, wait, what did we just say? Like that's like, but Boston. But if you looked at the quarterbacks, we were looking at that headed in. Like you had 2 top 12 quarterbacks in that game. That I think people slept on that. And in general, like the line showed, they were sleeping on Boston College also, who ended up kind of destroying the line. They were the underdog and ended up, winning pretty handily.
3 in a row.
Yeah.
We'll take
So,
it.
all right, Nino, you get another one. You get a bonus pick here. So, what do you got?
So, when I was on the show with you guys before, it seemed as though he was a hot hand.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of talked to him a little bit, this wide receiver, but he's got a juicy matchup against Arizona State, who's ranked 112th, I believe, overall defense. I'm going to go with, because his quarterback is just cooking.
Mm-hmm.
Give me Kyle Williams out of Washington State. He's just been doing his thing. I believe, I know Lincoln Victor was quote unquote hurt. He wasn't hurt in this game. He went off as well. So
right.
Give me Kyle Williams. He had 17 fantasy points this past week, but you're looking at 5 straight weeks of double digits. You had a 30-point banger in there as well.
Mm-hmm.
He gets the targets every week. He's getting almost 7 targets a week. If this guy gets in the end zone, you're getting in that 25-point threshold. So
getting those bonus
give me Kyle
points.
Williams.
Yeah. Okay. I like it. All right, Willie, I know you're typing away there, keeping the list updated, but do you have time to make a pick for us here?
I don't know if I can make that time, gentlemen. Yes, let's go. We're going to go Brashell Tootin, Virginia Tech.
My guy. Snipe me.
I didn't care for some of the other options. They were on a bye this week, so hopefully, he's kind of rested up. I want his yardage to come up. They get Syracuse. I know it's a little bit tougher match, but I still like what he's been putting down. So we'll go Tootin. Hopefully, he can get in that end zone, and that's going to be the biggest factor for him. So
I think I better get a running back knocked out here.
Get nervous.
I'm gonna stick with what works. Yeah, I'm gonna stick with what works. I hate to be the guy with multiple guys that I had the week before, but I'm gonna go Mekhi Hughes again from Tulane. Again, kind of
how was
little
he
bit
still
tougher
on the board?
Right. Yeah, he's 28%. And that's why I double checked before I made the pick. He was 28% last night. I'm not sure when Fantrax does their updates, but and I guess most people probably couldn't pick guys up overnight, from a Saturday to a Sunday. But this is a guy. This is the last week he'll be eligible. He's averaging 14.3, but again, he's a guy you look at in the last few weeks. He's had 26, 19, and 21 in his last 3. He's averaging 23 carries a game over that period as well. So he's become the clear running back 1 for Tulane. It's similar to Noah Smith, where he's got a tougher matchup going against the Rice, defense that's pretty good against the run. But because of his volume, I say we don't have to worry about that this week. He's going to get enough volume to where even if he's just getting 4 yards a carry, he's going to get you, he's going to get you 80 yards. But he's been fine in the end zone as well. So I like Mekhi Hughes from Tulane again. So my team's kind of mirroring last week so far. I've got 2 of the same guys, but hey, you got to stick with what works sometimes.
J-Mill, it's a phenomenal pick, dude. I was literally shaking over here being like, holy crap, am I about to get Quentin Cooley and Mekhi Hughes on the same team this week? Holy mackerel.
We weren't going to let that happen.
Nah, again, that was a great pick. All right, I guess I got to make a pick now.
2,
and
you have to make 2.
I got to make 2, and I was so excited about possibly getting Hughes that I'm sitting here now being like, oh crap, who do I go with now?
Right. We've all got one. That is interesting.
I think I'll probably
interesting running back run here.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna go. I'm probably gonna go ahead and grab one of my wide receivers here and grab another running back. I typically go for volume, but sometimes you just get players who are explosive. You just get players who are phenomenal in the way that they can just out-athlete literally everybody on the field, even when they're going up against some pretty solid matchups. And I'm going to ride on that and take Sion Vaki, the running back, safety, wide receiver hybrid out of Utah. Dude is just absolutely phenomenal, super explosive. Over the last 2 weeks, 20-plus fantasy points in both of those games. Granted, one of them's against USC's porous defense. Right. But at the same time, man, like I said, sometimes you just got players who are too good. And they're going to find ways to get this guy touches, whether it's on the ground, whether it's receiving. He's averaging over 7 yards per carry over the last 2 games. His receiving numbers have been absolutely phenomenal. Again, 149 yards against USC yesterday. Yeah. I'm going to ride on that and go with a fun little play right there. No, put him at running back for me.
Okay, my
J
bad.
Mill.
Okay.
Or sorry, Willie B.
I got you.
And then at wide receiver, I am going to go with the lead guy on a offense that I think a lot of us left for dead early on in the season. I'm going to take Brennan Presley, the wide receiver out of Oklahoma State. Very nice volume over the last 3 weeks as that offense has really started to get going over there on the back of Ollie Gordon somehow becoming a league winner in the second half of the season. Again, 8 targets, 11 targets, 10 targets over the last 3 games. He has seen nice volume, finding the end zone as well in a full PPR league. He is absolutely a very safe play. I will take him here for some consistent work. And he's got a nice little matchup against Cincinnati this week, who is 99th versus the pass.
I don't think he made a roster, but he was one of the holdovers that we had referenced at the end of the show last week as somebody we were surprised didn't get taken. I think Willie had mentioned him, and then Kyle added the note that Stribling is gone now, so like that's opening the door up for even more targets for Presley, and it actually panned out and was some good insight there. So that's a really good pick. I think I've got more receivers that I like left on the list at this point, so I'm going to try to get my second running back out of the way here, and I'm going to roll the dice a little bit with a guy that frankly I didn't know a lot about until I had to do my homework last night. But he had a huge game, yesterday. It's Cam Edwards from UConn. So I'm gonna take the UConn back against Boston College, who's not too good against the run. This guy, UConn had Washington. He's gone. He left the team. Rosa has been, I'd say, very disappointing compared to how a lot of us had him ranked in the preseason. And it looks like Cam Edwards is the next guy up at UConn. He had 22 carries for 149 yesterday with a touchdown rushing and receiving. There's not a lot of history prior to this in terms of him showing that he'll be able to do this again. But my gut tells me, he's the next man up there that they're going to try to rely on at running back, and they're not playing a very good rushing defense. So I'm going to take a shot with Cam Edwards at UConn, who's 0% owned.
J-Mill, did you mention that Victor Rosa also injured his ankle yesterday?
No, I didn't know that. Okay, so that there's okay, that's what opened the door.
As long as he's out, I agree with you. Cam Edwards is clearly the guy that UConn's going to rely on moving forward.
Yeah, I didn't hear the injury note, so that's good. Thanks for adding that, Jared. That makes me even feel better. I mean, all the best to Rosa and healing up, but ankles are tough to come back from in 1 week.
All right, so I'm gonna go another homer here pick. Since Nino did it, I'll do it.
I started a trend.
Yeah. And the fact that, he did well for me last week since J Mill is doing what he's doing. We're going to go Nick Anderson from Oklahoma. He's gone up a little bit from last night. He's 14% now.
Okay.
And like we say, they are traveling to Kansas. They actually they need to concentrate. Whatever it was, they were a little off. They weren't as bad as Washington was late last night, but they need to have a bounce back game, in my opinion, and that's offensively and defensively. But they can put a better product on the field, that's for sure. So let's see if they can get that done against Kansas.
I don't mean to interject on every player here, but one thing I wanted to point out with Nick Anderson, I put him on my list of trap players earlier this year because again he was getting so many touchdowns on such little volume.
Right.
And what I've noticed a lot of times is when you have especially freshmen who are kind of breaking out really early on, but they're not getting that full volume. Look to see what they do after a bye week. A bye week is typically when teams who have players that, maybe they weren't performing as well in practice, but once you put them out on the field, okay, they're doing a lot better than we're expecting them to. The bye week is when they really kind of entrench them as all right, we're going to start game planning around you. Right. We're going to start making sure that you get involved. Yep. Look at what happened to Nick Anderson this week. Before this week, the highest number of targets that he got was 4. Yep. He's been sitting around 3, 4, 3, and 1 targets the 4 previous weeks before the bye week. This past week, 10 targets. Right. He's going to be a massive part of the Oklahoma game plan moving forward. He is no longer a trap player. He is a bona fide CFF asset moving forward.
Totally agreed. Yeah.
There you go. That's what I love to hear right there. You heard it from Jared himself. He sold me.
He sold you on your own pick.
Yeah,
right. Well, there really is nothing better than when one of the other drafters like gives you the ringing endorsement, after you make the pick. So
everybody here is making phenomenal picks today, so I'm hyping everybody up. This is great. Good job, y'all.
This is we're with the number 1 and 3 picks on your guys' end, and Willie and I are both at that 90 points a game average for the old seasons. We know what we're doing. I think we got a little skill.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I passed on Hughes on purpose. I mean, I hope it doesn't bite me in the butt, but I like what Rice does against the run. That's the reason.
Right.
That's the only reason why I passed on him. But
Okay.
he was definitely on my radar, but I purposely passed on him. But that's still, everybody's making great picks though. That's true.
Jared mentioned the whole thing about going into buys and freshman wide receivers. So I'm just gonna piggyback off that. I'm gonna go with Kevin Concepcion here, right off the buy. They had the QB change. MJ Morris came in and he's been targeting them 24 times in 2 games. Now they're coming out of the buy. I think he's gonna get way more targets, if not the same. He's going to be the dude going forward for them. I believe, who are they playing now? Let me check here.
I think it's a tougher matchup is why I might have left him off, but yeah, I agree.
Clemson,
he's definitely...
They do get Clemson.
They get Clemson.
but
yeah.
They're going to be throwing the ball. They're going to have to throw the ball because most likely they're going to be behind.
For sure.
So I like Concepcion being in the game plan a lot here. I don't want to be, the guy keeps taking the same guys he took when he played last time, but I just think Concepcion here is a guy I think could get you a 25-plus point game.
Well, can we just
take
a moment?
Kind of funny you mentioned that,
What's that?
It's funny you mentioned that because I realized I can't take a lot of the guys that I took back in week 1 because again they've all probably gone over 30% by this point.
Right.
So I have to make different picks. That's funny.
Yeah.
I didn't think about that.
But since
Well,
Clemson
actually,
came up,
I think there's one. Sorry, J-Mill. I think there's one more, Jared, that you can pick. But back to that, Javon Baker was 17% owned when you took him week 1. He's still at 18 right now.
Yeah.
Wow.
Crazy.
Oh, good Lord.
That's amazing. I was going to say that I don't think anybody's a huge fan. So can we just take a moment to thank Miami for completely, taking the morale away from Clemson last night in that comeback win that they had. Thank you, Miami. I am a Dabo hater, and was really happy to see that. Plus it won me $25 on a $5 bet. So
hey, there you go.
Yeah. So all right. So you got one more, Nino.
All right. We watched a disgusting Mississippi State Arkansas game last week. This week that just passed yesterday. And there's only one gentleman on the Auburn offense that does anything, and that's Rivaldo Fairweather. He seems to be the guy that gets targeted a lot now the last 2 weeks. Mississippi State can't stop a nosebleed, anything. I mean, they got a QB change now with Mike Wright. Rodgers was out. So if they're going to be that kind of anemic offense, I think Auburn has a lot more chances on offense to get the ball, and the guy who's getting the targets is Fairweather. So give me Fairweather. I think this is going to be his game to get that. Over that green light, 10-15. I'll take him.
There you go. Yeah, we need him to get you 10, 9. I think these days 8 or 9 seems acceptable for tight end. Right, you just want 4 catches for 40 yards from a tight end at this point.
Give me 4 for 40 and a tutty. I'm happy.
There you go.
I was thinking about going tight end first anyway. So, no, I'm gonna probably wait on that. I just don't like any of the tight ends that are out here to be honest. But no, but with that, I mean, I got to go with the Oklahoma State's defense is just. Yeah, they're showing me it's a 120th rank against tight end. So we're gonna go tight end here.
Okay.
So we're gonna go Shamal Mateer.
Right.
I thought about him, but I got scared off last week.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, but he still had 5 for 50. He just didn't get in the end zone.
Right, he still had
Baylor's
10,
probably a little. Yeah, they're still probably a little bit better defense than Oklahoma State's is trotting out there. So, and 10 was the best that we had last week for tight end. So why not?
Yeah, and he's had his last 3 weeks, 20, 14, and 10. This is a guy we talked about and was on a roster last week. I think Moxley had him. And, he's kind of a year late. We thought this was going to be the guy for Cincinnati last year at tight end. It took him a year to kind of get into this groove, but he seems to be there. We've mentioned that if you can get a tight end that does it 3 times in a row as far as hitting double digits, you better stick with them because, these guys have been so fluky and off and on. It's been kind of a worse year than ever for consistent tight ends, and Mateer seems to be gaining that consistency finally.
It doesn't help that literally anytime one starts to get going, they get injured.
Yeah. Okay, so my pick, I like both of the tight ends I have left. I'm going to fill this last wide receiver spot with a guy that follows suit as far as what Willie B was saying, is playing a defense that I really liked receivers against, and Oklahoma State. I'll take the other guy on the team. Willie and I have gone back and forth about whether he should be on teams or not this year because he's been so inconsistent. But I think he's back. Xavier Henderson from Cincinnati.
Don't do it, J-Bell. Don't do it.
It is a gamble. It is a gamble. He's
Go
averaging 15.
Go ahead and take him.
I've had him here before, to be honest. I can't remember if I had him on the right week or the wrong week before, but I'm going to hope he can actually finally produce 2 weeks in a row because he bounced back again last week with 28.2. He's had 2 other 26-plus games. So he's got 3 games over 26, but he's also got 3 games under 7. So I know that I'm taking a little bit of a gamble, but I like him against the Oklahoma State offense. So let's that's 2 dice rolls, Cam Edwards and Xavier Henderson. But I'm going to have faith he can finally put 2 games in a row together.
I don't see it, but that's good luck to you on that.
All right.
And to piggyback on what J Mill's been saying. Yes, we've been talking about this guy. I finally cut all ties. And I went ahead and said, okay, I know he's going to have a good week, which he did, but then I know what's going to happen here pretty soon. He's going to revert back to, I just didn't want to need him and then he doesn't do anything. So I just went ahead and just cut all ties.
Yeah, he's kind of
He does feel like a nice receiver to have on your bench, like especially during the bye weeks where you throw him onto your starting lineup being like, okay, he could get me 3 points.
Right.
Or he can get me 27.
Right.
It's gonna be a huge boomer bust. But you know that going in. It's bye weeks. You're struggling already.
Right.
So you might as well kind of swing for the fences.
Yeah.
And for those who played him last week, it was great.
It was he's been great if you have him in best ball. That's he's doing what the best ball guy is supposed to do. But yeah, speaking of bye weeks, I mean, we didn't talk about the fact this is the last big bye week of the season, if I'm not mistaken. Week 6 and 7 were pretty big. This week 9 is pretty treacherous. This could be up there with week 6 in terms of teams that are on a bye. So more than ever, you need to pay attention to what we're recommending this week, I think, because you guys might have half your team on a bye once you look at your rosters this week.
I had 3 people that I was ready to take in this today, and then I'm like, shoot,
right.
they're on a bye.
Yeah. Jared, you're going to get your team nearly filled here with your 2 picks.
Yeah, nearly filled here, and you guys haven't taken a quarterback because you guys realized that I was correct in week 1, and that you should wait on quarterbacks because they're plentiful. Yep. Pat myself on the back. Why not? Anyway, but now I have to choose a quarterback because I'm not gonna let you guys choose all the quarterbacks at this point, especially when I got Chandler Rogers here sitting here going up against the Memphis defense, who is 74th versus the pass, so like just a little bit below average. But Rodgers is again, that Eric Moore system, he's going to be passing it a ton regardless. They're also 104th versus the rush, which is what North Texas does super, super well as well. You got Rodgers who can run as well. Mm-hmm. He is coming off a very consistent string of games here over the last couple of weeks. He's been the perfect bye week quarterback. You're talking about just looking for guys that are going to hit 20 points. Feels like Rodgers is almost a guarantee, so I think he'll be the one I go with here. Plenty of good quarterbacks left on the board, though, for sure. And then my other wide receiver that I am going to go with is a guy that I think has been kind of quietly productive. Mm-hmm. His volume isn't the greatest, but it's pretty clear that when this offense needs a big play, this is the guy they go to. I'm going to take Courtney Jackson, the wide receiver out of Arkansas State, rostered on 3% of leagues. Since Arkansas State has made the change over to Jalen Raynor, Courtney Jackson, transfer from Syracuse, has done pretty darn well for the Red Wolves over the last couple of weeks. Again, 23 points in half PPR formats versus Southern Miss, 15 against UMass, 18.4 versus Coastal Carolina. The only dud week that he had was against Troy, and everybody has dud weeks against Troy because they're a good defense. Other than that, he's been super consistent. Again, 94 yards, 75 yards, 99 yards, touchdowns against every team that's not named Troy over the last 4 weeks.
Nice.
I'm looking for him to do it again against a UM Monroe defense that's 122nd versus the pass.
I think we all admit we can't keep up with every single player, and I've had various weeks where I'll hear a name that as much research as I do, I still didn't know. And Courtney Jackson has been off my radar, so that's somebody I'll go look deeper into. Thanks, Jared. I always like, really getting advice and tips from the people that we have on here, because, I can't keep up with everybody, and neither can Willie.
I love Jackson.
Yeah.
I love him. My concern with Jackson, I think I had him on my list, but it's the targets. So he's only what's he get? 5 targets per game. So it's like he's got to get that big play in the game. But like you said, the freshman's been airing it out, so it most likely is going to happen. But I was just a little nervous.
And again,
5 targets.
I would say they also, again, it's a nice matchup as well. And I totally get it. I usually go for volume, but again, like, I can't ignore the consistency I've seen out of Jackson.
Agreed.
Yeah. I'm gonna have a little fun with this next pick, and I just feel like this guy deserves some praise and recognition, and he's on one of the best teams in the Mountain West at quarterback. And I thought initially when the season started and he was throwing out some good games, he was a little bit of a fluke. But Andrew Peasley from Wyoming has only had one game all season under 21 points. And he's playing a very bad, what seems to be now a very bad Boise defense, who 112th against quarterbacks. He's only owning, again, for your week 9 dig deep guys, this guy should be available in most leagues. He's only rostered in 5%. And he's averaging 22 points a game. And like I said, only one under 21 points. So you've got consistency, you've got production. Kind of reminds me of kind of what Haynes King and Castellanos have been doing in terms of not necessarily having those. Castellanos lately has been having more explosive games, but just kind of trudging along, doing what you want a fantasy quarterback to do, which is, be reliable. And he's not going to be your 30-point guy, but he should get you between 20 and 25 no matter what. And Wyoming's a really good team. So if you haven't watched them, tune in. Should be a fun game against Boise.
Greg Bowl is definitely one of the coaches I owe an apology for, because like when they had that exodus a couple years ago, the transfer portal, like all their offensive players were leaving and everything like that. I'm like, holy crap, this dude's gonna be fired by next year. Like clearly nobody wants to play for him and everything. Turns out he just needed to find some guys that actually bought into his vision. Look at this, Wyoming. Not only is Wyoming like just performing well, they're legit contenders in the Mountain West. Like they're doing really, really well. So honestly, shout out to Craig Bull, I guess.
Yeah. And as far as that Boise ranking now, they're 130th against the pass. So this.
Holy
this was
crap.
really a last minute decision here among the other guys I was considering, but like I just couldn't look past that Boise defensive rating.
If we're going to throw out names here, since we got all the wide receivers filled, like if they're really that bad against the pass, you guys might want to go check out Wyatt Whelan, their top receiving target over there.
There you go. And we'll have a little bit more of that when we wrap up, Jared.
For sure. Yeah, sorry, I didn't want to get too far ahead. Fine. Trust me, J-Mo, I am ready. I got names. This is gonna be a fun conversation at the end.
Right. We'll let Willie go first here, and then we're close to getting to that fun part of the show too. So Willie, who you got?
We're going to go Jordan McLeod.
Oh, yeah.
From JMU.
That's who I was choosing between. Just so you know, that was the choice that I had. I'll mention the other last, but that was one of the 3 I was choosing between.
Okay. All right. So speaking of guys who, are averaging, tons of points over the last 3 games, he's around 26 and a half. And then he had that 45 against Utah State about a month ago, but 19% owned. They have a decent matchup against Old Dominion. Mm-hmm. They have them at home. I just like what they're doing.
Yeah.
I didn't expect them to be where they are right now. So
and that's 20. He's averaging 27 over the last 4 games. So like he's had a solid of an October.
Right.
Yeah. Nino, you get to wrap your team up here. Let's see who you got here to finish things off. You're last at quarterback. were these three guys on your list, or did you have a whole different list of four you were going to choose from?
Let me see here. I had Rodgers. I had McLeod. I didn't have Peasley. I do like Peasley's mobility. I think he's been, showing out the last couple of games. I also had JT Daniels on the list from Rice because him and McCaffrey have got that connection, and he seems to be finally found himself as a quarterback after traveling to multiple teams. Daniels seems to be locked in now. But I'm gonna go slick here. I hope it doesn't come back to bite me in the butt, knowing this is the playoffs. So you gotta, go big or go home.
Okay.
I'm gonna take a guy. It's only 12% of rosters. In the last 5 games that he's played, he's got 7 touchdowns. He's going against Southern Miss, who's absolutely trash this year. No disrespect, but offensively, defensively, they're no good. Give me App State Joey Aguilar.
Yeah,
I think
I've been talking him.
I have a funny feeling he's going to be my Diego Pavia for this week. That's my hope. I think we can get the 25 plus out of him, possibly 30. Yep. Southern Miss can't do anything on any side of the ball. They can't stop any. They can't move the ball. Frank Gore Jr. looks like a ghost of himself in the past 2 years. So I think Joey Aguilar is going to have a day. If they get any kind of rush, he can maybe get some on the ground, but I think you're going to see some air.
Yeah, that's good. And Pavia, by the way, is finally not available. It took till week 9 for Pavia not to be available.
Hey, he started the season off, slow compared to what we thought he was going to be ending last year. And like I said in the comment, I commented on Lob's thing. He seems like he's in mid-season form from last year now. Well, so it took him a few weeks to get in that groove.
Well, you know what happened? You gave us the story 2 weeks ago that he had urinated on the Rivals logo.
Fired him up. That's it.
The only thing you were wrong about is it hadn't just happened. It had happened like the 3 weeks prior when I looked up the story. But that's what it was. Once he released on the logo, he set him off. Like the rest of the season, he was on fire. It just took
the most important bodily function for football since Lamar Jackson's halftime dump.
There you
That's
go.
right.
There you go. Yeah, he's been eating W's ever since.
God, what kind of rating do I need to put on this podcast?
I know.
Can we post this on YouTube?
I'm gonna have to look closely at when we do the Spotify to look closely at the what's allowed.
But look, once he got it out of his system, it's been a different quarterback. That's all we'll say about that.
All right, so I was torn between a few guys here. I'll probably mention them after we're all wrapped up. I'm going to go with the guy who was on the list last week. I know he's got a tough matchup against James Madison. They're ranked 24th overall defense. But this guy, Jared mentioned explosive players that are explosive, right? You're looking at a guy that's, 8 yards per run, almost another 8 yards per run the previous week, 21.5 yards per run. He's in double digits 3 weeks back-to-back. 2 of those weeks are over 20. I'm going to go with Kadarius Callaway out of Old Dominion. I just have a feeling – I know they are a tough defense, but a guy that's explosive, he's going to find a way to get his.
Okay. I forget how to spell Kadarius, Willie, even though he's been on the waiver watch for a couple different weeks. So I'm going to let you take care of that spelling.
All right.
And we'll add our background note on Callaway, which I was proud to dig into a couple weeks ago and make everyone aware. He's the former JUCO running back from Eastern Mississippi Community College. Who was committed as an athlete to Alabama, and Alabama filled his spot with somebody else, it seems. So he's taken that route through Old Dominion, which there's a lot of people that think he probably will only be at Old Dominion for this year and maybe transferring away next year because he's got that potential. He's that former big time athlete who's kind of just working his way back from JUCO, and Old Dominion fans should appreciate him while he's there. It took him 3 games to get rolling this season, but once they started giving him the ball, they're not looking back. They're not giving him 2 or 3 carries a game anymore. He's getting his 10 plus carries. This is a huge test for him though against JMU, who we all know is giving up like 38 yards a game rushing. So this will be a kind of a fun matchup to check out here and see if he can find any breathing room. I will say, a lot of those JMU rushing yards are attributed to the fact that they've got so many sacks. So it's not that teams aren't getting true rushing yards, they're actually getting them taken away because they're averaging like 6 sacks a game for 70 yards. So even if a team has 100 yards rushing, it's minus 70 because of the sack production on their end. So so there is an opening there for him to do some work. I mean, if Ethan Payne can get 70, Callaway should be able to get 70 because he's a much better athlete.
Thank you.
All this Ethan Payne slander recently. I touted him last week, and I had like 3 people I respect coming to the comments being like, nah, he'll never be the number 1 running back at Marshall. I'm like, this dude's waited his turn so long. Like he did all right last week against a pretty good defense.
Here's who he is, Jared. He is Tucker Gregg from Georgia State is who he is.
Ooh,
which is an adequate fantasy player, but just maybe with some limited mobility.
I'll trust your opinion on it because you know these guys.
Yes,
you had direct insider knowledge on what's going on.
Now, but that said, like Tucker Gregg was a 1,000-yard producer at Georgia State for a couple of years, and he wasn't he was kind of that 15, 16-point guy. So for your planning for next year, probably a good bench running back, but he's not going to be Laybourne or Ali in terms of the flashiness. I'll put it that way. Hey, Willie, finish your. I don't want to put it that way. Go ahead and take your last pick.
Yeah, thank you. Pause. We're gonna go with another guy who is coming off a bye. Had a great week before the bye. So let's hopefully Jared's correct, and they've identified that this is going to be the man as far as when they get to that goal line. We're going to go Jonah Coleman out of Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
They have Arizona State. They have Oregon State this week, so this should be a pretty good game. They put 44 on Washington State the last time they were on the field, and should have had USC. So I think there should be a lot of points scored here.
Yeah, he's big and strong. He's a redshirt freshman, and he's working his way into like kind of a true. He's kind of stealing Wiley's.
I was going to say Wiley's a thing of the past now, right?
He's stealing Wiley's shine over there. So that's a good one.
Oregon State's defense, they flashed a little bit, but they're still allowing 125 plus on the ground and a touchdown per game. Right. So it's not a bad pick.
Yeah, I had him on my list.
Nope, not at all.
I did have him here.
I had him too.
So Jared was wondering who I'd take at tight end. I'll say I'm choosing between Tanner McLaughlin from Arizona against Oregon State, and kind of the home team Marshall with Cade Conley. I had sent the warning signals about Conley a couple weeks ago that he looked banged up and it hadn't been reported, and it turned out he did miss 2 games. He was back against JMU, but it's JMU. They were tough. Cam Fancher couldn't even get the ball out of his hands half the time, but he made some nice catches, just not as many as he normally does. But I think he'll start to see an uptick in targets again, get back to those 6 or 7 targets a game. So I'm going to go Cade Conley from Marshall this week. They get a little bit of extra rest. They played on a Thursday. They're going to have a couple extra days off to kind of regroup and get the team back together. And Conley was a big part of their wins in the early weeks, and I think he's healthy now, and you're going to see him kind of get back into that top 12 status among the tight ends. He's averaging 9.3 right now, but he's a guy that should get that 5 for 50 or 4 for 50 to get you those 9 points, and then if you get the touchdown, you get the bonus.
All right, since everybody else is gone with a homer pick, I feel like it is only fitting that I do so as well. And it works at the tight end position when there is literally, it is very hard to find good tight ends off the waiver wire right now. So might as well roll the dice on my guy, Oscar Delp at Georgia with Brock Bowers going down. Now, let me be very clear to everybody out there, and I'm going to say this on my show as well. Oscar Delp is not Brock Bowers. You're not grabbing Oscar Delp thinking you're grabbing the guy who's just going to replace Brock Bowers' production. It's just not happening. Brock Bowers is his own animal. I actually think that Dominic Lovett, the wide receiver at Georgia, who plays out of the slot, he's going to benefit more with Bowers being out than even Delp is. But like I said, tight end's a wasteland. Let me roll the dice on Delp increasing from his 2 to 3 targets per game to, again, he's not going to reach Brock Bowers levels of, 8, 9, 10 targets per game. But, if he can get to 5, 6 instead, pulling a touchdown, because that's just Carson Beck's used to looking in those
Mhm.
matchups. I'm going to roll the dice on that, and I think Oscar Delp could be in for a pretty good week against Florida, which according to Fantrax is 94th versus tight end. So we'll see if he can take advantage of that this week.
And Jared, you seem to have more insight into the Fantrax algorithms and are in regular correspondence with them. Do we know the science behind their rankings? Like, it's not so much. I'm not so much concerned about it like a tight end or quarterback, but do we know kind of how their algorithm works when they're kind of judging defenses against receivers and running backs?
So it seems like it's mostly just total fantasy points given up to that
Okay.
position, like that defense gives up to that
Okay. So
position.
it's not like by a player's
So
average.
they don't differentiate it between.
It's not like
What was
by
that?
they're not averaging the totals from individual players. They're just looking at the grand total. Okay.
No. I think it's just grand total, and they're not splitting it between slot receiver, out wide wide receiver, scat back, and talking about the running backs. Are they giving up a ton to running backs on the ground, or are they getting beat by running backs who are catching out of the backfield? That's a pretty big difference there.
Yeah.
And
yeah, because we all use it and kind of keep our fingers crossed that we think it's a good way of looking at things, but we always warn people to kind of make sure you cross reference that with, maybe just the kind of the pure rushing and passing defensive stats and yards per game and touchdowns that defenses are giving up in different categories too. So I think kind of a blend of the two is probably the best way to go for the people that are kind of figuring out the best way to research these things.
It's good to understand how the numbers are calculated for each one and what the context is going to each of them. Like you guys mentioned a little while ago with the James Madison rushing defense. That's a huge piece of context that the reason why they're so high is because they get a ton of sacks. That has nothing to do with running backs. So you might go into it like Nino and you guys said, you might go into it thinking oh, it's James Madison, the number one rushing defense. Ethan Payne, again, like you said, he's just a plotter. He's not going to be a guy that's going to flash or anything like that. Still had a decent production against James Madison last week.
Good. All right. So that's good insight. We had been kind of talking about that all year long. So thanks for that feedback. And I guess, our rosters are complete. We're going to do a quick kind of rapid fire accounting of who we feel maybe the best 1 to 3 players are, left on the board at the end of this draft because
just 3?
Jared, I'm sorry. So we're gonna keep you on a limit here, Jared. We'll go rapid fire. We will start with you though, because you seem to be itching to get a couple of your top players that weren't taken out there to the public. It's a huge bye week. These names are probably just as important as the ones you see drafted. Who do you got maybe as your top 2 or 3 that were left on your board, Jared?
I'm going to give one at each position, and then I'm going to cheat with quarterbacks and just give you the names but no analysis. At quarterback, Kyron Jones and Garrett Green both have good matchups this week. They're both on the 30%. I think that both of those guys easily could have been taken here. At running back, I'm kind of surprised nobody went after Malik Sherrod. Had a really, really good week against Utah State a couple weeks ago. 24 attempts, 131 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Granted, it's Utah State. They're not exactly great against the rush. But I personally misread that Fresno State rushing game throughout this entire year. I thought Elijah Gilliam was overtaking Sherrod. Then Sherrod got hurt. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess it's Gilliam's show from here on out. Sherrod comes back, and he's doing what I thought he would be doing from the beginning of the year. He looks like they believe now that he is healthy, he is their best back, and they're going to run him like it. So I think he has a pretty decent matchup this weekend. Again, it's the only reason why I didn't go after him in this one. And that wide receiver, I'll throw out a Mac name. Okay. And that is Mr. Kenneth Womack.
Yep,
wide receiver out of Western Michigan. Hasn't had a ton of – he's been very up and down, but look at these target numbers. Yep. 8 targets versus Ball State. Okay, fine. 16 targets versus Mississippi State. 7 targets versus Miami of Ohio. 19 targets versus Ohio last week. This dude is just – if you just want to go after volume – this dude is that guy. And if you're in the MAC and he gets the right matchup on the right week, I'm not saying that's this week, but because he got Eastern Michigan this week, that's why I didn't take him. But if you pick him up now off the waiver wire, he could have a really nice MAC matchup in the playoffs, and he could be massive for you with the volume.
Yeah, that's the guy. If you want an up and down guy, that's the guy you want instead of Henderson, in my opinion. So if Henderson was getting those targets, we could talk. but that's I like that, Jared.
Yeah, and he's on my. You took one of the guys I was going to mention, so I want to kind of double endorse him. The one note I could add is that besides the 19 and 16 target games, he's had 3 others with 10 plus, from what I'm seeing. So he's got five games this season where he's had 10 plus targets, and like 19 is an unbelievable amount here in week 8 that he just had. And then if you look back at his 3-week run, he had 23. 3 weeks ago. Then he did dip a little. He had 8, but then he bounced back and had another 29. So, Womack is 1% owned. He's a deep reach where you should be able to find him in just about every league also.
Give Nino a shot, man. I could give you more names, but I think I don't want to take everybody's guys.
Go ahead, Nino.
I'm gonna go deep sea fishing with a couple of these guys. One of them is a slick play. Yep. I talked about this gentleman before the season started. It's gonna be more of his backup. Kyrie Robinson, for San Jose State, has been everything asked for. Outside of that week 1, he's been the guy. But recently, his partner, Quali Conley, has kind of been stepping up. We got 20-plus points back-to-back weeks. It's not just flashes. He had 10 carries the week before, 15 last week, 3 touchdowns in those 2 games, and he's getting targeted in the pass game. So I think Quali Conley, it's going against Hawaii. I think any one of us gentlemen could put on a jersey and maybe probably get some positive yards against Hawaii. So I like Conley in that one. He was that was who I was torn with between Conley or Callaway. Right. I just didn't want to get too cute. I know I went with Aguilar. I'm like, this playoffs, can't get too cute. So
all right, now
that was the guy there. And then I got a receiver, and they don't throw the ball a ton, but when they do, it seems to be going to this guy's way, and he's going against USC. And again, any one of us, I think, could go out there with a jersey and probably get open and get some passes. Give me Taj Davis for Cal, right? He's got 300 yards in the year, 3 touchdowns. But over the last 2 weeks, right, he's got 18 targets, 13 receptions. He scored a touchdown. But we played Utah last week. It was a solid team, right? And he had 11 targets, 7 receptions, 93 yards, and a touchdown. For a team that don't throw the ball against a stout defense, it looks like Taj Davis is emerges their wide receiver 1. USC doesn't stop anything. So I think Davis is a guy. If you're looking for a deep guy to have some points for you, I think he's a guy.
All right.
I love your Quali Conley call out. I had him on my list to take today. If every other running back I wanted was taken off the board, he absolutely would have been somebody I would have been comfortable picking for this week.
And side note there, I got the text from Willie B last night where we've about our Kings Classic roster where we've got Kyrie Robinson. And he says, well, we're going to have to make a decision about Robinson because Conley was, stealing a little bit too much of his volume. And then it turns out
way too much.
Robinson still gets 20 plus, which works. And that's part of the reason we're 8-0. I always have to get the Kings Classic Success plug-in. So, it's interesting. They've got 2 running. You talk about receivers a lot that can share the wealth in fantasy. It's very rare when 2 running backs can do that, but it looks like that's starting to happen there at San Jose State where you don't necessarily have to be fearful of the other. They're both going to kind of work their way into the rotation and get their points. So Willie B and I do have a lot of hard thinking to do this week, though, about if Robinson should suffer as a result of Conley's success. But we'll see what happens there later in the week. Willie.
Dude, you don't have to worry one bit about Kyrie Robinson because that dude could have 1 touch in a game and he'll find a way to score 2 touchdowns. Because he just gets touchdowns.
Willie, real quick, what you got 1 or 2 for us that you wanted to mention, or you good?
No, you guys pretty much mentioned them all. I'm glad you did mention Garrett Green. He was the 4th quarterback that I had on my list. Yep. Everyone else is taken.
Yep.
Running backs, I'm not going to mention that. I like Silas Bolden
from Oregon State. Yeah.
Good call.
Yeah, I do like what he's doing. And then also just one other one. I still like Keys the third.
Yep. He's another one I had.
But outside of that, everyone else has been mentioned.
All right. Well, I've got one final one then for everybody. And I know we all stayed away from him last week thinking that he was probably more of a fluke. Turns out this week he proved that maybe he's not, which is it Elick or Elick? Iomanner from Stanford.
A Stanford receiver?
I mean, he followed up the 18 targets with 13. So he's had 31 targets in the last 2 weeks. Even prior to that, he had 8 and 7, which, he wasn't as productive in those weeks. But it looks like, the week we thought was a fluke maybe wasn't so fluky, or he at least put himself on the radar enough for Stanford to know what they can do with him from this point on. So he's not on a very good team, but he seems to be the only thing working on that team. We know the backfield certainly isn't. So I would say, it might be time to roll the dice on Io Manor, because he could get you something, it looks like now. But
Jeremy, I got a deep dart. It's a homer pick, okay?
Okay.
I know they're going against Army, who tends to keep things on the ground. It's running the ball. UMass quarterback, he was a Clemson, recruit. Tucson, I always mess up his name.
Fobachan.
Thank you. He's a running QB, right? He's very athletic, and Army tends to keep games close. But we've seen what Castellanos did against them.
yeah,
This kid came out of Clemson. He was highly recruited by them. I think he could have a day. If you were struggling and needed a guy in a pinch, I think
and
he could
UMass
fill
has
that role.
had some, guys. Adams was doing well for him earlier in the season. He kind of fell off a little bit, but they've got the potential to produce some CFF players. I think what would be fun is if we get. I would just like to see a cut up of all the names Nino messes up, because. I mean, I thought I struggled with names. Like Nino can't even get the Italian kids' names right. When we went,
Nope.
we were talking about the Middle Tennessee quarterback a couple of weeks ago, and I thought he's for sure going to nail this one, but he couldn't even get that one. So I would love to just see like a 2-minute cut up of like Nino just pronouncing last names.
I'm the worst. I always give my co-host. I usually give the co-host the crappy names announced because I know.
Or you just pause and like you pause enough to let them know like you need to fill in the blank here for me.
Thank you.
Right. I do have one more, and it's a tight end. And the only reason why I didn't take this guy is because they're playing Georgia, and that's Arliss Boardingham from Florida. So he has back-to-back games with 7 targets. He had 28.9 2 weeks ago against Vandy, and then he had 16.5 yesterday against. I'm sorry, no, they were in a bye. So that was October 17th when he had it against Vandy, and then their last game he had 16.5 against South Carolina after they played Georgia.
All right. Well, that's plenty of names, guys. Good luck to everybody. 84 is the score you got to beat to kind of get your way into the finals, or you can just go ahead and do better than Moxley at 95. Jared, any final words?
Love this show. Love that you guys have like put this into like a listenable format. Again, it kind of serves a great niche in terms of like finding guys that are going to help you this week, specifically for college fantasy. Again, my show, a lot of my waiver wire stuff, my strength is finding rest of season guys. I look like a lot of times I'll bring up guys who have a bye week that very week, but I'll be like, hey, like once this bye week goes by, they'll be back to being great for you. Guys like Arliss Boardingham, I'll probably bring up on my show today at some point today, but at the same time, like I'll tell him like, don't start him this week, but afterwards he should be good for you the rest of the season. Love that you guys are doing this. It's a ton of fun. Love that I was able to get on here twice this season. It's a lot of fun.
And last season. So you're
Thanks,
a repeat semifinalist and finalist from last year. So
yeah. I don't think I won last year if I recall correctly. But
it was pretty that that final was 51.8 to 43.1.
Who won it? Who beat him? Who beat him, Willie?
John.
Lob. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, Lob.
Yeah. He subbed in for Matt Hicks, I think.
Right. But by week, the excuse there is you could say by week 11 everybody's gone. Like you're
dot throws.
Yeah. Nino, what can we see from you this week? And parting words.
I appreciate being on here again. Like I said, we did a little bit last year, and I got on 2 weeks ago and was able to have a good team. I was a little nervous, Jared's is a elite podcaster, and he breaks down everything very well when it comes to these deep dives and guys to go forward. So I was a little nervous I was going to be able to keep up to the standard here, but it seemed like I was all right.
You did a good job.
You did great, dude.
Yeah.
Hopefully we can have a good run down the stretch here and keep it close to see who moves on. But, I'm over at CFP Nation. We got a couple breakdowns for this week. We did, Penn State and stuff. You can check those out. We'll be diving into this upcoming weekend. What games that you want to see, just shoot us a message and we'll break them down for you, and we'll talk them over at the CFP Nation.
All right. Well, this is Jay Mel letting everyone know you can find us now on YouTube and Spotify at CFF Lists. You can also find us over on Twitter X at CFF Lists and on Instagram, as always, at College Fantasy Football. Willie B, final shots, final parting words.
Yeah, I want to reach out to you guys this off season to see if we can put some stuff together. I told J Mill that I don't want to go silent for 6 months. So I definitely want to get in and get some offseason work with you guys. So look for that.
All right.
Sounds
And
good.
for
Absolutely.
everyone else, thank you for watching and listening. Good luck this week.
All right.